It's podcast day. It's podcast day. Welcome in, friends. I am here in the craft room, and you can see that's my craft closet over there. I normally have that closed, but shame-free zone. I am at the spinning wheel. I'm plying today, plying up some of my handspun sock yarn. So I've talked about this a couple of episodes back. I am plying up sock yarn to use for a pair of socks to join Denise of Earth Tones Girl in the Falling Leaves sock cal. And 2022 is the 5th annual cal, which is pretty amazing. So I want to have this yarn plied up, washed, dried this weekend if possible. I'm hoping that I can work through some of the very thick and thin sections I've created in this yarn. I'm doing a chain ply, and that will make a nice round yarn. And I'm realizing that my spinning in the very beginning of this bobbin was much thicker than where it's ended up. So that's okay. I'm going to start working with the yarn regardless, because these are going to be cozy socks, and I'll probably pick a fairly simple pattern so that it can shine. So that's okay. I'm going to start working with the yarn regardless, because these are going to be cozy socks, and I'll probably pick a fairly simple pattern so that it can shine. So that's what I'm up to right now. What are you up to? What you doing? What are you working on? I feel like this part of the year, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, is a very fibery season. I hope that these socks will be a comfort knit, and even if it's not cool outside here in Florida, I can feel like I'm connecting with my friends around the world who are getting those morning breezes and those chilly evenings. And maybe by the time I'm finished knitting them, that will have arrived here too. Hope springs eternal. It's pretty overcast today. That means we're probably going to get some rain. It's that part of the late summer where we have a thunderstorm just about every afternoon. But in the last few days, we've actually had rain starting as early as... I thought I had my watch on. I don't. As early as now, right around 10 a.m. So I have my spinning wheel facing a window out to the backyard. Let's see. Catch a glimpse of that. I feel really fortunate that I can have an outdoor view while I'm making. It helps somehow. It's calming, it's soothing. So I was just continuing on my plying, and I realized that I need to take a break. Have you ever gotten into the zone of your crafting and time just doesn't exist anymore until you realize that your shoulders or your neck are getting a little creaky, things are getting a little stiff? It's very hard for me to want to stop when I feel like I'm getting momentum, especially with something like spinning onto a bobbin that you can see the progress. It's like, oh, I just want to get to the end and finish this off. But my body will suffer, and I actually think the yarn will suffer, because the things that I pay attention to when I'm alert and, limber, I start to lose some of that. So I stopped, and as a part of stopping, I can just give you a look at the yarn so far. Now, normally I don't like talking as I'm showing something and you can't see my face, and I know that some of my viewers, it's helpful to them to be able to read my lips. So at this point, I would encourage you to turn on closed captions on YouTube if you'd like to, just while I talk about this yarn for a few minutes. You could see the subtitles that way, and hear my description of this yarn in progress. So I have it on the bobbin on my spinning wheel. I'll put the information about my spinning wheel in the description box below in case you're interested. And I have gone down one end of the bobbin and I'm coming back. I've basically filled it partially going down this way and then came back, and now I'm making another journey back down the bobbin. I noticed in the yarn, as I was saying earlier, that I was spinning it thicker early on. I rewound these bobbins, as you would have seen in the video. And so the first part of my spinning is what I ended up starting with in the plying. And that makes sense to me now more than ever, because that's a way to have the yarn that you're going to want to knit with when you start this skein closest to the beginning of the skein. And if you're like me, your spinning improves as you go. So the yarn that's on the bobbin right now is kind of in that middle portion where I started to thin out my ply. If you get a closer look here, you can see it is a bit thick and thin. Now, I expected that variation because these were mill ends. That means they were kind of the leftovers from yarn that was milled, and they were neppy and a bit inconsistent in the fiber, but also as I was getting used to drafting and spinning it, you know, I kind of was playing with drafting techniques and my pace and cadence on the wheel. So yeah, there's definitely some parts in the yarn strand that are thicker and some that are thinner, but I'm okay with that. I actually think this is going to make a really cozy pair of socks. The strand itself is quite plump. Okay, random, but check out this beautiful eco-printed card that I got from my friend Maria. She is my sweetest. There's a nice handwritten note in here, but I'm just going to use this because I have it nearby as a way to show you the yarn strand a little closer. So some consistent parts as we go, but there are also areas where you can see it's a little bit puffy. There's a little bit of variation. But I fully believe this is the beauty of Handspun. This is not commercially milled yarn on purpose. You know, I'm making this handmade thing, and the fact that it looks handmade is a part of the beauty. So you can see here, I even have, when I'm doing chain ply, the thing I have to really be careful of is overplying it and getting it ropey or like coils. Here's some parts that are maybe underplied, a little bit thinner. Yeah, I'm totally okay with it. I've had the experience now of knitting with handspun yarn. It always turns out okay. I'll share a few more clips with you as I finish this yarn. Finishing involves getting it off of the spinning wheel, off the bobbin, and onto a niddy noddy so I can make it into a skein, washing it and hanging it up to dry. And then I'll share the finished skein with you. I'm not sure yet what sock pattern I'm going to make. I said earlier I might do just something very plain, like a stockinette sock, to really show off the colors and the texture in the yarn. But every time I say that and I start a vanilla sock, I get bored with that quite quickly. So maybe I'll find a simple texture in one of my sock patterns that could work here, or just add in some texture elements as I go. That's the fun part about socks. They're just a canvas that are ready and waiting for your imagination to take off and If it does turn out that the easiest thing for me in the next several weeks is to knit a stockinette sock, then that's what I'll do instead. We'll see. We'll see. Let's make this into yarn first. And here's the rain right on cue. I love a rainy weekend day. I know most people want to be out, and I often do too, but sometimes it's nice that the weather forces you to stay in and be cozy. Hey friends, I'm losing the light here because it's getting on to evening, but I finished the plying of my handspun sock yarn. Want to see? Human head for scale. I don't normally fill up my bobbins like this, but it came to a point where it was like not worth it to go get another bobbin for the amount of yarn I had left. So I'm fairly pleased with this. I mentioned before that it's inconsistent in that there's a lot of thick and thin parts to it, but it's mostly consistent from one end of this to the next. So I had a lot of really fine spinning towards the end of my spinning time. I'm going to see what I can do to plan out how I use that in my socks. For example, I might take that finer yarn out of the skein, kind of separate it, and use that for a specific part of the socks, like split that into two and use it for both cuffs. I may do that, so that should solve it. Very autumn colors, I'd say. Quite pleased. I'm going to let it rest overnight, and tomorrow I will put it into skein form and then wash it and let it dry. All right, see you there. Hi friends, bit of a strange angle, right? I'm sitting on the floor next to my Swift. Got my Swift here. I'm about to tie off this skein with some cotton yarn. Just put some figure 8 ties on there, and that way I can dunk it to soak it. I didn't want the whole video to just be my hands and things. So I'm pretty excited about this yarn. It's interesting how my feelings change about handspun throughout the different steps in the process. When I was spinning the fiber at first, because I decided early on not to be too precious about it, the drafting was a bit bumpy at first, and I was pulling out some neps and trying to figure out what was the right amount of fiber to work with. All those things make the initial part of the spinning process pretty choppy. That, you know, it's not a smooth rhythm at first. And so I didn't really know how to feel about the fiber or the colors or how it was spinning up. But I was enjoying just sitting down and being at the wheel, and I really liked the idea of this for a sock project, so that kept me going. Then once I had been spinning for a while, my spinning got finer. So it's a bit lumpy bumpy, then it got finer and finer and finer and finer. So towards the end, I was doing like some lace weight strands. I don't know. I guess that's what my rhythm looks like. I fall into a rhythm of a very fine spin. And so I realized that the skein wasn't going to be consistent, and I was okay with that too, because I really liked how the colors were working up, and I really liked how I was able to get through more of the fiber with less inconsistencies. Then once I was plying, it's like the process, the mental gymnastics start all over again, because the chain ply is something that I'm not proficient at yet, meaning that I don't have a default chain ply method or anything. So I was a little bit hesitant in the start of that. So just lots of different mindsets as you go. Now that it's done, I love how it looks. I am totally okay with the fact that throughout the skein there are different widths in here. I've probably got some heavy DK or worsted down to fingering weight, to be honest, throughout the skein. But I'm totally okay with that. And now I'm about to tie it off and soak it. And then, you know, when I hang it up and it dries, it might turn into a totally different look. It may, one of the common things that happens with some fibers is that it expands and fluffs up. So we'll see. I think it's one of the most appealing things to me is the multi-stage process make that has memorable pieces at each stage. I mean, this is a spinning episode, so you're just going to see this yarn a lot. Let's get her prepped for a bath. All tied up. I opened it up a bit. Maybe some more air circulation will help. Although it's warm out here, this is not going to take long at all to dry. It has bloomed a little bit. I can see more of the halo now. Now that it's been soaked for a while. It's a bit of poof to it. Friends, I have made a mid-episode decision to split this project into two parts. So you have just finished watching part one, the making of the handspun yarn, and part two will be the knitting of the actual sock project. So I'm going to save all of the clips of creating these socks for the next upcoming episode. I hope you'll join me. So I'll see you over there for part two. Mwah.